today's World Insight. As China opens up, a flurry of foreign business executives visit China. Today we speak to the CEO of mining giant Rio Tinto on the long-term vision of his company and China.
All the indicators we see is that the Chinese economy is coming back strongly.
And foreigners can't help but see China through a suspicious foreign lens. We speak to a Portuguese scholar on China who argues that China was instrumental for the industrialization of Europe as we know it. And here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Since China optimized the zero-COVID policy at the end of last year, in-person interactions between China and the rest of the world has been increasing dramatically. We also have more in-person in-depth interviews with movers and shakers from around the world. Now we present you our interview series, China and the World. Today, let's meet Jakob Stausholm, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Rio Tinto Group, a global metals and mining giant. Take a listen. Jakob, good to see you.
Good to see you.
China has set its GDP growth rate at around 5%. There were people suggesting, why is it so low? Because China usually have more than 8%. There are others say, oh, maybe 5% is already a too much exaggeration. They can't reach there. Now, coming over here, trying to check out the business over here, talk to your partners, what do you make of that around 5% to you?
Look, first of all, I know that China a decade back could have double-digit growth, but it was on a much smaller economy. Today, it's the world's second largest economy, and 5% growth is a lot. And it has a massive impact on the whole world economy when you're growing 5%. So I'm very happy to see that China is opening up now and is coming back on a good growth trajectory.
What does that mean if it is around 5%? I'm sure a lot of math already done from your part of the world, right?
No, look, all the indicators we see is that the Chinese economy is coming back strongly. And who knows whether it's going to be 5% or 6%. That's not really the point. What really matters, because Rio Tinto, we are a long-term company. We're thinking about the long-term development of China. And for us, it's good to see that it comes back on sustainable growth. But it's not just so much about this year, it's about what is it this year, next year, etc.
So as a business leader, how do you look at where China is and the uncertainties surrounding it and related to it?
The world is complex, but it's also amazing what is happening. Look at what we have just been through. The whole world have been through 3 years of COVID. And we are now coming out, actually, in my view, with some enthusiasm, and you can see that the world is bouncing back. Chinese economy is opening up, so I take an optimistic perspective right now. I'm excited about what I'm seeing here. I'm also pleased to see that the Western world, which 6 months ago was predicted to go into recession, has not gone into a recession. So a number of indicators are positive.
Dual carbon commitment. Carbon neutral and carbon peak, of course, 2030, 2060, that's what China's commitment is. You also see that being demonstrated recently in many of the documents put out by the Chinese Communist Party, the ruling party, and also by the Chinese central government. Now, what does that mean to your business?
It's hugely important, because if the world is not aligned around addressing climate change, it's very difficult for a global company to find a way to maneuver. And what we have seen over the last few years, China is very clear. Western Europe has for a long time talked about it. The US has now started really addressing climate change as well. So this is actually an area where I see a great deal of alignment. We also have a kind of a dual target. We are trying to reduce our CO2 emission by 50% by 2030 and be neutral in 2050. Nonetheless, the dual challenge of China is gigantic, because to reach the breaking point at 2030, when your economy is growing so much, will require a lot of improvement in CO2 efficiency. And I hear that all the time when I speak to Chinese leaders. I see a lot happening. I'm very pleased with it. I really feel that it's addressing climate change here in China is deep felt. And
it's very serious.
I think so. And I, we might not have all the solutions, but through research and development, through innovation, we will find the solutions. And we can only find them together. I feel that I have a little stake. I have something to offer, but I feel that we need to learn so much from others. It's only through cooperations.
What do you think are the most important baby steps from your perspective, that we are doing right now could help us eventually to crack the code?
Such as installing a lot of renewable energy. You're doing an awful lot in China. When I look at the plans in Inner Mongolia, it's simply impressive. But that's not going to solve the whole thing. We also need to solve a number of manufacturing processes, and that's where research and development plays in. But we already see a number of encouraging trials. So the key thing is, can you find an effective way to produce green steel? Because today, the whole steel chain is 8% of the world's CO2 emission. If we can eliminate that, steel is really the materials of the future. And I can see that day coming.
What are the dots that we can eventually connect together? Where are the dots are?
But the key thing is there will always be needed a lot of energy to produce steel. And therefore, what is a given is that we need more renewable energy, whether that's hydropower, or it's solar, or it's wind, or it's nuclear. Who knows? But we need much more renewable energy. And then we need to, so to say, fix the manufacturing processes. And there are many pathways to go there. And a year or two from now, we would know some of them didn't work, but we'll probably find that some of them will work.
A lot of new ideas are in the decision-making process of China. For example, high-quality growth. That's so closely linked to the dual carbon achievement that China has aspired to reach. But how do you see these slogans at this point, still a political slogan, being translated into real actions and policies? What do you aspire to? What do you want to see as an investor here?
No, look, maybe I don't like the word slogan, because I think actually it's very clear strategy. And China has very successfully grown through the last few decades and is now in a different, better position where it can really focus on the quality of the growth. If I think about the same thing for my businesses, we have grown, and particularly an iron ore business, into the steel mills here in China. And now the next quality step is, how do we take steel from being a very CO2 intense product towards making it green steel? That is something where you suddenly can see that what you have produced is becoming truly sustainable. Because whereas economic growth have provided a lot of prosperity, it also has an impact on the planet. And we are now in a situation where we have to address that.
When the economies worldwide is not necessarily doing very well, so the innovative spirit could be somewhat rather reduced, or shall I say, not as much as it used to be. So how do you see the reality vis-a-vis our desire to be better?
You're right. We need international cooperation, and I think a starting point for that is trade. Trade is something that is a win-win, of mutual benefit, but it also has the other benefit of that we get to know each other and we find solutions. What I see is that we do trade, but we also do research and development together, because we are always asking ourselves, okay, we did it this way today, how can we do it more efficient tomorrow?
So tell me more about, after the 3 years of the pandemic challenging everybody, how do you see the styles of understanding a global CEO like you has to have?
Well, it's probably different from business to business, but Rio Tinto is a very long-term business. If I try to do something very short-term and transactional, I almost for sure know that it's not good for my company. And that's where how we have worked with Chinese partners have often been through decades. And if you have a mutual understanding that we are trying to figure out something for decades, then the relationship suddenly matters much more than it's the deal of next month. And I think that is the foundation for the relationships, and that's why it is relevant for me to spend a lot of time now in China, and I'm very pleased that there are business people in China who are prepared to meet with me as well, because my sense is here in China, you tend to look long term as well.
But a lot of people are looking only short term these days because they are, they do not know how to handle the uncertainty. They think that the world might be very different next time. So what about now? Let's just do it at most. So how do you, trying to reconcile the short-term challenges vis-a-vis the long-term vision, which you emphasized from the very beginning of our conversation? I think that's tough.
It is, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be intense in the moment. You need to work with intensity short-term, but you have to work towards long-term goals. It's a tricky thing of finding that balance. But I actually find peace of thinking long-term. Because I could
like that peace.
Yes, I find peace because, you never know when you open the newspapers and there's a bank that has cracked and the market goes up and down. I don't think about that because I know that our markets will see growth over decades. We need to address climate change. That's building a new energy system to the world. That requires the materials we are producing. So I know over the long term the demand will be there. I might have 6 difficult months, but we can survive that.
Even without globalization, there could be also big wealth gap as well in societies. So one of the things, if I remember right, by doing the reports about the 2 sessions which just wrapped up in China, is to solve the common prosperity issue. It's going to be a long-term goal. The other thing is about how to engage with the local community. That have been contributing to the businesses or sometimes even unrelated to the business model itself. So how do you see engagement with local community to make sure that they are going to have a share of the benefits of development?
No, thank you. That's an excellent question because I think the common prosperity is something that I, as a business leader, will have to leave to politicians.
Yes.
It is really for society at large to figure that out. But we have a massive responsibility where we extract and where we process things to work with our local community and create win-win, to create support, to create employment, and in general see positive social outcomes. We as Rio Tinto are one of the companies on the planet that interact most with First Nation indigenous people. And that puts a big burden on our shoulders. So we're really trying to lift the game here. And my own theory is that it's not just the right thing to do, it's actually good business. Because it's only when you got a win-win and a local support that you have a sustainable business for decades. Otherwise, you don't know, you might work well this year, but you have a problem next year, etc. That's not how you want to work.
Thank you so much, Jakob, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your time.